First of all, I enjoy listening to John Mearsheimer. I'm going to go into his bio later. But that said, he sort of runs a con, and I want to explain how he runs this con. Now, everybody's sort of running a con, so don't get me wrong. I'm not taking it personally. I just want to explain to you how I see him running the con to me, okay? And this con is that his whole sort of political philosophy is based on structural realism, or I forget the name of it. Let me just go look it up over here in my notes. It's called offensive realism. So his thing is like, okay, this whole idea of democracy and liberal idealism of the West, it's all nonsense. Countries basically, they want to be, if they can, they want to be hegemons in their region. They want to exert power. They want to keep their neighbors weak. They want to be strong. All of that. So he's very effective in that way because whenever he's interviewed or talking, he's very self-deprecating, and he's very easygoing, and he's like, of course, everybody's like nuts if they think like people are idealistic. Russia just wants Ukraine. It wants NATO out. Russia doesn't want NATO on their doorstep. It wants them out. I mean, it seems so logical, right? And so it's sort of relaxing to listen to him. But the place where the con breaks down for me is that when he talks about the United States, like let's just say with Ukraine or Iran, he doesn't say, the United States is trying to topple the region. The government of Iran is trying to get the nuclear weapons. Whatever he says, Trump is. He's always talking about like Trump. So I'm going to play you a clip right now.
President Trump indicated that the United States was going to stick to hitting military targets. And by today, if the Iranians had not surrendered, he would hit power plants, bridges, and what are commonly referred to as civilian targets. And he would do that because he was desperate and he had to get the Iranians to surrender. But what happened is that towards the end of last week, he started hitting power plants, bridges, and oil facilities inside of Iran. Now, the question is, what did the Iranians do?
So you see in that clip, he talks about Trump as if Trump, is like the one with agency, if Trump is the one actually pushing these things. That's not my experience. I mean, Trump may be a great real estate salesman. He may be great on TV running a reality show. He might even be a great president. I don't know. But as a geopolitical analyst, as somebody who understands geopolitics on a scale from 1 to 10, he's a 0. And I hate to, he's a complete moron in that area. And I'm sorry I have to use that word, but I mean, I need you. I mean, he doesn't know anything. Now, I've been following him for a long time because I'm from New York. I've never heard him ever have an opinion about geopolitics. So, I mean, John Mearsheimer, if you're watching, I'd like you to point me to one time where Trump has said something insightful about geopolitics or an opinion that you would think he formed on his own, that he's not just repeating what somebody said 5 minutes before for shock value. I've never seen it. I've never seen him show any interest or knowledge about any of it. He doesn't know anything. But we're going through a period of anti-intellectualism in the country where you don't need to be smart. You don't need to understand things. Like John Mearsheimer here understands tons of things, right? I mean, he's a 10 on a scale of 1 to 10 in geopolitics, whether you agree with him or you don't. And but Trump is a 0, but because Trump is able to not make decisions based on democracy and idealism and liberal values and all that kind of stuff, because he can be like just a strong, no nonsense, common sense man. He can just make a good decision about something, while all these feminine people are like, oh, but we need democracy, are floating around, right? Again, that's John Mearsheimer's that's his sort of thing, right? Is that, we just have to look at the world like men, and I mean, he doesn't say it in that way, but that's really his shtick in a way. Shtick is to be realpolitik. Everything is just, again, it's just based on strength and weakness and people getting what they want. But when it comes to America, he always talks about Trump. So the question is, why does he talk about Trump in that way? That's where I want to get to. What's the con there? See, the con is that most people who watch YouTube or whatever are out there watch these shows, they view the world in a very simplistic way. They don't view it like a geopolitical analyst or historian or political theorist. They just look at it like it's a TV show. You have Trump, this politician doing things, or Biden or whatever, and then you have Putin and you have Netanyahu and you have all these like leaders making decisions in their countries for what to do. Like they make the decision. If Trump wakes up tomorrow and he's like, oh, the war's over, then the war would be over. Same thing for Netanyahu. War would be over, right? But is that true? Is that true? No, I don't think that's true. It's very complex how wars get started, how they're continued, what's going on. It's very complex. It's not just based on one guy. But Mearsheimer is always like, well, Trump decided this and Trump decided that and whatever. But when he talks about Iran, he'll say, well, Iran decided this or Iran decided that. Or with Russia, Russia decided that with Russia. Like, how can you compare like one man with countries? Like Trump decided to do this and Iran decided to do that, right? They have to be similar. You should say the United States decided to do this, even though you don't understand how the decision came about. Or Iran decided to do this, even though you might not, again, understand the decision. But he doesn't do that. So again, why does he keep talking about Trump to represent what the United States is doing? Because that's how people view it. And he basically what he's doing, the con is like, oh yeah, I understand Trump. You understand Trump. I'm smart because I know how he thinks and I can predict. I can tell you what he's thinking and what he's doing. And we can all feel confident that we understand what's going on because we all know it's about Trump. And I think I have a bigger insight into what Trump is doing or Putin is doing. And so therefore, that's how we're going to talk about it. Whereas somebody who's a geopolitical theorist or analyst or just somebody who studies the lies isn't looking at it like that way. I don't look at it that way. I mean, Trump to me is just a figurehead, right? He's just a small component in this whole thing. But Mearsheimer wants you to believe that he's in the seat of power. You know what I'm saying? Like he associates himself with Trump so he can feel like he's in the room. Do you know what I'm saying? Like you should respect him because he's in the room, even though he's never in the room with Trump, right? I mean, he couldn't deal with Trump either, right? Because Trump is a nutclad. It's the same thing with Victor Hanson, another very conservative historian, is always talking about Trump. Now, Victor Hanson is totally off the rails with, sucking up to Trump or, talking about Trump this and Trump that, right? The Mearsheimer, but they're both very sort of the same, similar way. Like, the world is explained through power and not through idealism or liberal democracy or all these sort of like squishy things that's explained by men. And, Trump is a man, he's a common sense. He speaks his mind. He doesn't fool around, all this kind of stuff, which is nonsense. It's just nonsense. It doesn't explain really anything. So again, the con to me when I hear Mearsheimer go, oh, well, Trump decided this, I'm like, do you really believe that? But I'm getting ahead of him. So I'm going to just go through some slides and talk about some stuff. But that's a general idea that I wanted to say to you is one, Mearsheimer runs sort of a con on getting people to think that the world is very simple, just based on men of action. That number two, like Trump makes the decisions and Mearsheimer is agreeing with it and he's just saying to other people like, well, I'm in the room, like, I'm with Trump, like I understand him, so you should respect me. If you think Trump has the power, then I have the power too because I understand him and I can explain him, right? But again, I don't think that's true. That isn't why the U.S. is at war with Iran. I mean, Trump is just one component. Okay. Again, sorry, this is all going to be off the cuff. So here's biographical material anyway, it doesn't make a difference. So he graduated from West Point in 1970, so he knows something about military stuff. PhD in political science from Cornell, and he's written extensively about security issues and international politics. And he goes through these various books that he's written. Okay, here's some more. And this is where he actually talks about himself. This is at the University of Chicago. I am an international relations theorist. More specifically, I am a realist, which means that I believe that the great powers dominate the international system and they constantly engage in security competition with each other, which sometimes leads to war. So that's his, big thing. Like the reason Russia invaded Ukraine is that it doesn't want NATO encroaching and stuff like that. But if he really believes that, right, then it's the same for every country. It'd be the same for the United States. And by the way, other people have pointed this out. So he shouldn't be talking about Trump this and Trump that. He should say the United States and the United States that. But the reason he doesn't do the United States thing, by the way, is because people will then start to say, well, wait, are you saying the United States is bad? Like I said, he panders to the audience. He's running a con where he's not going to get people to question him because he's not saying the United States. He's not saying like we are a bunch of idiots, like we attacked Iran and we should pay for it, right? No, he is Trump. Trump this, and Trump that. So it gives everybody sort of like, plausible deniability. Anyway, so does a realist believe Trump directs foreign policy? I don't believe that. I don't think anyone does. So he says he's a realist, yet he says that this basically buffoon is running foreign policy for the whole country. It's just, hard for me to believe. So here's like a whole thing where this is from his site, from Substack, where you can see just how he, talks Trump speak. So he says, the weekend, the Prime Minister Netanyahu is playing in his meeting with President Trump, as well as the powerful incentives the president has to put an end to the war as soon as possible, right? He's saying, hey, yeah, Netanyahu, Trump, they're calling the shots. We're in the room together, like I'm in the room to letting you know what's going on. But, the Trump the president has all these incentives to end the war. Like, of course. Now, by the way, Trump he hates war. He's always hated war. Not like he hates war, like he doesn't want people killed. He doesn't like anything that takes away from attention to himself. He's a narcissist. Okay, so he goes, I also emphasize not only how difficult it will be for Trump to get Iran to agree to another memorandum of understanding, but that the terms will surely be less favorable for the U.S. than the terms of the 17th June 2026 memorandum of understanding that the president foolishly walked away from. So he's saying, okay, he foolishly walked away from, but we don't know if he did it or others, within the administration did. There are a lot of people with a vested interest in either starting the war, continuing the war, expanding the war, curtailing the war, ending the war. There's a lot of politics going on behind the scenes. And again, Trump has never shown any interest in geopolitics. So it's hard for me to believe that he actually has a personal opinion about it. He's just, people telling him to say this and say that, and he says it. And I think, I don't want to get into like stuff that sounds like conspiracy theory stuff, but I think he's only in the war because people that give him a lot of money basically just, they're so unrelenting. He's just like, okay, fine, we'll attack, right? But it had nothing to do with any geopolitical situation. It was just that the people that, pay him and whatever might have some, extortion type material. He just finally said yes. I think partly because he's just old, right? So anyway, so he says, Mearsheimer, he goes, I argue that he's foolish not to take advantage of the first ceasefire. Again, he's making it sound like he and Trump, like they see the same things. Again, this is, Aristotelian rhetoric, right? He said he surely could have gotten a better deal by that point than the one he ultimately got on the 17th, as if Trump made the MOU himself. He didn't. Trump never talks about any of this stuff, ever, in any way that you're like, oh, he gathered a bunch of his secretaries around and said, listen, this is going to be the MOU. This is what I think, right? He never has an opinion about that stuff. He only comments on stuff after it happens, right? Or stuff that he wants to happen beforehand, which is always inarticulate and crazy. Like, we're going to bomb them to the Stone Age. Like, who says that, right? Like, who really says that? Like, any intelligent person working in any of this stuff doesn't say it. He's a buffoon saying this stuff, and he just says it out of frustration. It has nothing to do with it. And then he says, Mearsheimer, the fact is that Iran's bargaining leverage only grows with time. Again, I agree with a lot of stuff John Mearsheimer says, but, again, he's, okay, it's Iran in one area, but it's Trump in nothing. Plus, the Iranians get more and more evidence that Trump cannot be trusted to stick to a deal. It's not Trump, it's the U.S. The proper sentence would be, Plus, the Iranians get more and more evidence that the United States cannot be trusted to stick to a deal, and that is the truth. But again, he doesn't want to write that because then people can say, "Oh, you're anti-American." And he's gonna get all this like backlash, right? You're not like American, a patriot, or stuff like that. And again, Mearsheimer panders, right? He runs the con that many of these guys do to basically stay away from low-level insults and just go with the crowd and just follow these basically canards. What's the word for it? I don't know. Anyway, okay. So then one other thing recently, again, this is from today. Even he goes about an interview he had on a YouTube show. It looked at the time like President Trump was about to launch a massive attack against Iranian infrastructure to include its oil facilities. Again, I don't think Trump is like thinking, "Oh, we're going to attack now." Like, he's not following any of this stuff. And I don't think he's saying, "Okay, let's go from the infrastructure and oil facilities." I don't think any of that happens. This all happens behind the scenes of people who want the war, and they talk with him, and then they say, "Okay, so I think we should hold off from the Iranian attack for whatever reason." And then when they interview him, he says, "Yes, I'm going to hold off from the Iranian attack, right, or whatever. I'm going to do it." He's not saying what he wants to do or has decided to do. He's just basically saying what the people in the room have decided to do, and he's going to deliver you the news as if he made the decision, as if he's the one in power, because that is his con. That's his con. And Mearsheimer has the same sort of con. Like, there's things happening in the background, but, I'm in the room, and, so, okay. So here's Mearsheimer's offensive realism. So Mearsheimer is the leading proponent of neorealistic theory of offensive realism. It places, so unlike, again, the classical realism, it places a principal emphasis on security competition among great powers within the anarchy of the international system, not on the human nature of statesmen and diplomats. So think about it. So Mearsheimer generally says it's not about, statesmen, diplomats, or even people like Trump, even politicians. It's about the system itself, which actually I sort of agree with. But again, if that's true, why do you keep talking about Trump and not about the United States? You should say, the United States wants this, and Russia wants that, and Iran wants that, and China wants that. You shouldn't make an exception for the United States. And then when it comes to Putin, he's like, Mearsheimer called Putin a first-class strategist who should be feared and respected, right? I mean, okay, like, but again, is Putin running Russia? Is it all Putin that they invaded Ukraine? I don't think so. I think there's a lot more to it. But again, it's just, Putin, Mearsheimer taps into this American idea, this American anti-intellectual idea that a man of action is a man that has real knowledge and can make good decisions. And that's sort of the irony. Again, it's a con because Mearsheimer is a geopolitical theorist. I mean, he is a political theorist. He is an intellectual. So Mearsheimer's an intellectual through and through, but to get fame, to get celebrity, he plays the con of basically bolstering and of this sort of mindset that you don't need to be smart to understand the world, right? You just need to know that Trump is a man of action and common sense decisions, and then you're in the game. You don't need any of this stuff. Okay, so then another thing where he praised Donald Trump's handling of the issue and said that Ukraine must agree to Russia's terms. Now, this is the whole thing, but, Mearsheimer is wrong about Russia, in my opinion, okay, and many other people's opinion. There's an element of truth to what he's saying, but he's mostly wrong, okay? Putin and those guys are just a bunch of freaking nut jobs. And I think, by the way, Iran is the same sort of Zionist, American Christian nationalist, a bunch of nut jobs behind that too. But they're smart. Don't get me wrong. They're not like dumb or anything like that. But it's and they have some reasons. But I don't think like they're idealistically. And again, it's sort of an irony, right? Like Mearsheimer's like, okay, well, it's not. Nations don't go to war because they have not. Because of their idealism about liberal democracy or anything like that. They go because they feel that they need the strength to defend their borders, right? But now he's saying like, okay, well, Putin himself had to invade Ukraine because of this. Anyway, so I think I've lost my train of thought there. Anyway, Trump is a populist. He's not a politician. And that's very important because Jervis, I forget his name, who critiques Mearsheimer's books and stuff, says presidents consider a host of internal and external factors in making foreign policy, from how American adversaries will respond to how American allies will react to how a given policy will play in the next election. So if you read like history of books about Obama or the Bushes or Reagan or most of them, they all actually had substantive conversations. Now the presidents like Obama, they're not geopolitical, like it's not their specialty, but they know how to ask good questions. They know how to they get into it and they try and make the decision that is the best decision that the group is that each person in the group is trying to argue. But Trump is not like that. Trump does not, he never says, oh, I'm going to do this because it'll be better in the future, right? It's always just for the day. Like he rationalizes for the day what he's done or what he thinks he's going to do, what he thinks is going to make somebody happy or is going to work. But there's never any sense whatsoever, I've never seen it, that Trump has actually had an intelligent conversation about policy for anything. He's never talked about policy, period, ever. Again, he's just a guy that thinks that, okay, I'm smart, I'm the stable genius, so, I don't need all these intellectual people and all this conversation. I know the truth when I see it, and that's what you need, okay? So, anyway, this is where, Mearsheimer argued that Putin had no intention of invading Ukraine, yet he did. So basically, Mearsheimer made these arguments, and they're it's been going on for 5 years, and everybody sees it. It has nothing to do with anything. If, for the sake of argument, right, that Russia really wanted to keep NATO out of Ukraine, what would it do? It would invade to the borders and prevent NATO from bringing any equipment into Ukraine. That's what it would do, but it did not do that. Okay, it just did not. So Mearsheimer's wrong. The West has been funneling weapons into Ukraine for 5 years, and Russia has done nothing about it. Why? I don't know, but my feeling is they just thought they had a gambit. They thought, okay, we'll roll in. Ukraine is weak. Zelensky will get on that plane and fly away, and we'll get somebody better in government. I think that's what they thought, and I think it was a reasonable gambit to go after, but it failed. Okay, it failed, and now they can't leave, okay? It was never about NATO. It was about that. And even if it was about NATO, it doesn't make a difference. It's not what's driving anything anymore, as far as I can see. And this is sort of about, the blob and policy making. But I think I'm getting, so here I just wanted to show you New Yorker, right? And this is from last year. Why John Mearsheimer thinks Donald Trump is right on Ukraine. Trump isn't right about anything. He doesn't have an opinion about anything. He only has views which he thinks are provocative and which he will adopt as his own because he thinks they make him look tougher or better, get better attention to those around him. He's, in a sense, the most gullible president we've ever had. All right, so how would John Mearsheimer stop doing a con? He would basically, again, not talk about Trump or Putin or any specific individual, but he would stick to his core theories about structural realism. What do these countries want? What does Russia want? Iran, the United States, Israel, and only speak in those terms. He would speculate based on his knowledge. Why are these countries doing this? Why is Israel invading Lebanon? Why did Russia invade Ukraine? Though I don't think it matters much anymore. Why isn't Russia leaving Ukraine? Why is the United States, I guess, gave a lot of weapons under Biden, but is still basically supporting Ukraine right now with satellite imageries and stuff like that? So what's going on, right? I mean, who's really driving the conversation behind closed doors? Like, how are these decisions being made? How were they made in the past? How are they being made now? Does he think they might be made in the future? Again, for John Mearsheimer to give up his con, he needs to stop pandering to basically shield himself from any criticism, but make his argument about what the countries are doing and not be afraid to say, well, okay, the United States is doing this, and I think this is how the United States came to this decision, and this is why it's good or bad or whatever he thinks. But stop it with the Trump stuff. Stop it. You're embarrassing yourself.